My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and I reached for it without thinking. It was a message from my mother. I froze when I saw the words. "Honey, I think it's best you sit this one out for Christmas. Noah's fiancé is coming, and with her high-profile career, it's just better to keep things low-key." I stared at the message, rereading it, letting the words sink in like a slow poison. Sit this one out. I had been getting my business off the ground for the last 15 years, building Westridge Strategies into a company that was making waves in the industry. And yet, every year, it felt like I wasn't even really part of the family. Like my achievements, my success, my hard work didn't matter in the face of a pretty smile and a high-paying job. I typed a reply, paused, and then deleted it. I wasn't about to beg for an invitation. The message wasn't just a casual suggestion, it was a dismissal. And deep down, I knew it wasn't just about Noah's fiancé. It was about me, and it always had been. The thing is, I could take the criticism. I could handle the way they'd never quite given me the credit I deserved. I'd learned how to live with it. But it always stung a little more when it was so blatantly clear. They didn't see me as part of their world. They didn't see me at all. I tossed my phone aside and walked over to the window. My breath fogged up the glass as I stared out at the city skyline. It was beautiful, sure, but I'd earned every bit of success I had on my own. No one had helped me when I was starting out. No one had believed in me when I said I could make Westridge work. And now, I was being told I wasn't good enough to be part of a family holiday because some woman with a high-profile career might feel uncomfortable. The thought was almost laughable. And yet it wasn't. Back then, I used to look at my parents and wonder if I'd ever really be seen. I wasn't Noah, the golden child who never seemed to need to try. I wasn't the one with the easy smile, the natural charm. But I had built something. I had created a company from the ground up, and now it was changing the game for a lot of people. That should have meant something. Instead, it felt like my accomplishments were always overshadowed by appearances, by the things that didn't matter. And every year, it felt like they were just waiting for me to fall back into line, to stop questioning why they couldn't see me for who I really was. I thought of all the times they had shrugged off my success, all the times they had brushed off the sacrifices I'd made to get where I was. They couldn't see it. They never could. I was just Rachel, the one who didn't fit the mold. I sank down onto the couch, staring at my phone once more. I considered calling my mother, but I knew what would happen. She'd say it wasn't personal, that they loved me. She'd say all the things I needed to hear, but I would never really feel it. Not like Noah, not like his fiancée, whose job was shiny and impressive. And suddenly, I was hit with the sharp realization. This wasn't about me at all. This was about them. It was about their image. And I was nothing more than a footnote in their perfectly curated life. I sat at my desk in the high-rise office, a cold cup of coffee forgotten beside me. The meeting was in 15 minutes, and my mind was a million miles away, lost in the whirlwind of family drama that had come to a head only hours earlier. I had been gearing up for this merger for weeks, a $240 million deal with one of the most promising tech companies in the industry. It could propel Westridge Strategies into a new stratosphere. The email pinged. It was from Noah. He hadn't even given me the courtesy of a phone call. "Rachel, I know you're upset about Christmas, but honestly, it was just a misunderstanding. Mom didn't mean to hurt you. It's just that with Vanessa coming and all the attention on her, it's better to keep things quiet. You know how it is. Don't take it personally." I scoffed, reading the words again. I felt the familiar weight of frustration press against my chest, but I didn't have time to dwell on it now. I was in the middle of a high-stakes business deal, one that could shift the future of Westridge and give me the power I'd always needed to finally be seen. I sighed and shook my head, leaning back in my chair. Vanessa. I hated the way he spoke about her, like she was the golden girl. The unspoken truth was that everything revolved around appearances. Noah's fiancé had a high-profile job that came with a lot of glitz and glamour, and that was all it took to get their attention. It wasn't about what I'd built, about my hard work. They saw me as the workaholic who didn't quite fit their polished image. They saw me as a disappointment. I checked my watch, 5 minutes to go. It was time to switch gears. I opened up the latest projections for the merger, my fingers flying over the keyboard. The numbers were promising. This deal would open up new markets in Europe and Asia. It would give us the leverage to push our brand into global territory. But more than that, it would solidify my place as a force to be reckoned with in the industry. Just then my phone buzzed. It was my father. I answered it, the formal greeting I had perfected over the years slipping easily into my voice. "Rachel," he said, his tone all business. "The merger. We're counting on you to finalize the terms. Your uncle's meeting with the board tomorrow, and we need to be able to show them the numbers." "Don't worry, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I'm on it. Everything's ready. I'm just waiting for a few more confirmations, and then I'll finalize everything." I hung up, the knot in my stomach tightening. There was always this pressure to be perfect, to execute flawlessly. It was the only way to get any recognition from my family. If I didn't pull this off perfectly, I wouldn't get the respect I'd earned, no matter how much money I made or how high my company climbed. And that was when I realized something. I could leverage this. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to play by their rules. I had created something on my own. And maybe, just maybe, this merger was my chance to turn the tables. They had always treated me as the backup plan. The one who would step in when they needed help. The one who would shoulder the burden without question. But now, I had the power. I had the cards in my hand, and I didn't have to play the victim. I wasn't just going to sign a deal and walk away. I was going to use this opportunity to remind them that I didn't need their approval. I had something far more valuable. I took a deep breath, looking over the documents once more. The meeting would happen in a few hours, but my mind was already made up. I wasn't just going to let this merger happen. I was going to make it my moment. The day of the merger signing arrived, and everything was falling into place. My office was buzzing with last-minute details, preparations, and phone calls. But beneath it all, I could feel something shifting inside me. The usual nerves that accompanied big business deals were absent. Instead, a quiet determination settled over me, one I hadn't felt in a long time. I looked at my reflection in the polished surface of the glass wall, adjusting my blazer. The tailored suit was perfect, expensive, sharp, and fitting. I was ready to make a statement. This wasn't just a merger. This was the moment I would take control of my narrative. Vanessa, my assistant, was already in the conference room, making sure everything was set up for the deal's finalization. I could hear her voice filtering through the door, confirming things with the legal team. I smiled to myself. She was good at what she did, efficient, sharp, and quietly brilliant. But today, she wasn't the one people were going to remember. I checked my watch. It was almost time for the meeting to begin. My phone buzzed on the desk, and I glanced at the screen. Another message from Noah. It read, "Are you sure you're okay with how everything's gone down? You've always been a bit touchy about these things. Don't let Christmas ruin what we're building." I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. The nerve of him, really. What we're building. As if I was the one being difficult. As if my family's lack of understanding was somehow my fault. They never saw the years I spent building Westridge from scratch. Never acknowledged the countless hours I'd poured into making it what it was today. And yet, here they were, pretending it was all about them. As if the latest family drama should take precedence over everything else. I set my phone face down, not bothering to reply. No, today wasn't about them. It wasn't about trying to fit in. It wasn't about proving my worth to a family that would never see me for who I truly was. Today was about me, my company, and the power I held in this room. Today was about making them see me as the force I had become. I stood up and walked out of my office, the heels of my shoes clicking sharply on the polished floor. The conference room loomed ahead. Vanessa gave me a quick nod as I entered, and I offered her a smile in return. "Everything ready?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She nodded, her fingers dancing across the tablet she was holding. "Everything's in place. I've got the legal team lined up, and the paperwork is ready. We're all set." I took my seat at the head of the table, my chair creaking slightly under the weight of what was about to happen. The doors opened, and the team filed in, my father, Noah, and a few key people from the legal and financial departments. The others settled in, and I scanned the room briefly. Their faces were all so familiar, yet for the first time, I felt as though I was the one who truly held the reins. They took their seats, and Noah shot me a quick, unsteady smile. My father sat next to him, offering a grunt of acknowledgement, but I could see the apprehension in his eyes. They were waiting for me to act like the dutiful daughter, the one who would follow the script, do her part, and keep everything running smoothly. They expected me to blend into the background like I always had, invisible, doing the work but never being seen. Not today. I set the stack of papers in front of me, my fingers tracing the edges as I slowly opened the first document. Let's get started, I said, my voice cold but commanding. The usual routine was followed, legal jargon, numbers, signatures, but there was something different in the air today. As I scanned the documents, I wasn't just listening. I was planning. I had a plan in place, and it was going to be my moment. The room grew quieter as I slid the final paper across the table, and I stood up to give my closing remarks. My eyes scanned the room. My father, Noah, and everyone else, all of them unaware of what was coming next. I just wanted to thank everyone for their hard work on this deal, I said, my voice calm and measured. But before we finalize everything, I need to address something important. This merger, this deal, it's more than just numbers. It's more than just business. It's about what we value. I paused, letting the words settle over the room. I could see the confusion flicker in their eyes. They weren't expecting this. My family, I continued, has always valued appearances. They've always prioritized image over substance. They've never really seen me for who I am. Not the woman behind Westridge, not the one who built this from nothing. They've always preferred to look the other way, like I'm some sort of afterthought. I could feel the tension building. Noah shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but I didn't take my eyes off him. You're probably wondering where I'm going with this, I said. Well, it's simple. I'm no longer going to be the afterthought. I'm no longer going to play along with this family's narrative that I'm just the quiet, invisible one. I am the one who made this happen. I am the one who brought this company to life. And I'm not going to be sidelined anymore. A beat of silence passed. No one spoke, and I let the weight of my words sink in. Finally, I met my father's gaze. This deal is happening, but it's not just for you or Noah or anyone else. It's for me. And from now on, I will no longer be part of your background story. You're going to see me as I am. I took a step back, letting the shock linger for a moment before I spoke again. And with that, I'm going to sign these papers. But I want everyone here to know. This is my deal. Not just a merger. It's my statement. I'm done being invisible. I picked up the pen, and as I signed the final document, I knew the tables had turned. This wasn't just a business move. It was my power move. It was time for them to realize they couldn't ignore me anymore. The moment was mine. The room fell into a heavy silence as I put the pen down, the last signature on the document complete. The deal was sealed. My eyes moved over the table, meeting the faces of the people around me. They looked stunned, disoriented, but none more so than my family. Noah was the first to speak, his voice wavering just slightly as he pushed his chair back from the table. Rachel, that was a little dramatic, don't you think? His tone was an attempt at deflection, but I could see the nervousness flickering beneath it. I leaned forward, my hands folded neatly on the table. Dramatic? No, Noah. Dramatic would have been me letting you continue to treat me like I didn't matter. Like my work, my sacrifice, my success didn't matter. I'm done with that. The air in the room grew heavier, and my father shifted in his seat. I could feel his disapproval radiating from across the table. His eyes narrowed, like I had just betrayed the unspoken rule that had held our family together. Never rock the boat. But this boat had been sinking for years, and I wasn't going to sit quietly any longer. You know, I continued, my voice calm but laced with a new edge, for years, I've been the one to make sure everything runs smoothly. I've been the one to help, to fix, to support. And in return, what have I gotten? Dismissed. Overlooked. Like I'm some sort of lesser. I glanced at my father. I've built a company worth millions, and you still can't see me as anything more than the one who takes care of the family's messes. The tension in the room was palpable now. Noah opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing him. No, Noah, I said, cutting him off. I'm not done yet. I turned my gaze back to my father. For years, you've treated me like I wasn't part of the family. You preferred Noah's perfect life, his flawless trajectory, his image. He's the golden child, the one you all look up to. But it was never about his success, was it? It was about his image. The way he fits the mold. My father's jaw tightened, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross his face before he quickly masked it. He was trying to look tough, to remain the patriarch of this family. But I could see it now. The cracks were showing. You've always seen me as an outsider, Dad. Someone who just didn't fit. I paused, letting the words sink in. But that's over. I built Westridge, not Noah, not anyone else. And it's time you all learn to respect me. Not for what I give, but for who I am. The silence stretched, and I could feel the heat of their stares on me. My family, my father and Noah, weren't used to me speaking like this. They had never heard me confront them like this. They had never expected me to push back. I glanced at Vanessa, who was standing silently by the door, waiting for her cue. Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw a spark of pride in them. She knew what this meant. This wasn't just about the merger. It was about me finally taking control of my own story. I stood up from the table, walking over to the large screen on the wall. With a few swift taps on the remote, I brought up the finalized deal on the display. The numbers and projections for the merger laid bare for everyone to see. This wasn't just some random business transaction. It was a shift in power, a moment of reckoning. This deal, this merger, it's not just a win for the company, I said, turning to face my family. It's a reminder that I've built this from the ground up. And it's time you all recognize that. I'm not the invisible one anymore. I'm not just the one who writes the checks, who steps in when you need help. I am the one making the moves now. Noah shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and I saw my father glance away, his pride bruised but his stubbornness still in place. Rachel, he started, but I wasn't done yet. You didn't see me before, and now you're too late to catch up, I interrupted, my voice steady. But that's okay. I'm done asking for your approval. I've built something you'll never understand. And that's something you'll have to live with. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with all the unsaid things that had been building between us for years. I could feel the weight of their disappointment, their frustration, but it didn't bother me the way it once did. This was my moment. I looked at my father and Noah one last time, letting the silence linger for a beat longer. I'll sign the final papers, but this deal? This is just the beginning of what's to come. You all want me to play by your rules, but from now on it's my game. Get used to it. I turned away from the table, walking toward the door. I hope you're ready. I stepped into the hallway, where Vanessa was waiting. She gave me a quiet nod of approval as I walked past her. There was no need for words. She knew what I'd just done. As I walked to my office, the weight of the day lifted off my shoulders. I didn't need to prove anything to them anymore. The merger was done. The family? Well, they'd have to catch up. And I wasn't waiting for them. The next few hours passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and final paperwork. The merger was official. The deal was signed. Westridge Strategies was poised for its next big leap, and I could already feel the weight of the world lifting off my shoulders. But as I sat back in my office chair, reflecting on the power move I'd just made, something gnawed at me. Something told me that what had just happened wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I didn't expect it to come so quickly, but my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from my father, and I felt my stomach tighten as I clicked it open. Rachel, we need to talk. Your mother and I are deeply upset. We've been through a lot together, but the way you've handled things today has crossed a line. We're family, and you should know that family comes first, not business deals. You've hurt us, and I don't know if I can forgive you for that. I stared at the screen for a moment, the words blurring together. The hurt was there, but there was also something else, something that always seemed to follow every family confrontation. Guilt. I set the phone down, the message still hanging in my mind. Guilt. It was a familiar feeling, one I had carried with me for years. But not today. Today, I was done feeling guilty for not fitting their mold. Done being the one who always gave and never received. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. And Vanessa entered without waiting for a reply. She had a stack of papers in her hands, But there was something else on her face, something that told me the drama wasn't over yet. Your father called, she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. They want to meet. Your mom, your dad, Noah. They're saying you need to make things right. I exhaled slowly. Make things right? Or do they mean make things right for them? I asked, not bothering to hide the bitterness that had crept into my voice. Vanessa hesitated, then set the papers on the desk. They're threatening to pull out of the family partnership if you don't smooth things over. A heavy silence fell between us. I didn't need to ask what that meant. My father's company, Turner and Noah Holdings, had long been a lifeline, and they had always expected me to keep things running smoothly for them. But this time was different. I had done everything they asked for years. Helped them, picked up the pieces, swallowed their slights. But today, I had made a choice. I wasn't going to play that game anymore. Tell them I'm not going, I said, my voice firm. Tell them if they want to pull out of the deal, they can. But they won't control me anymore. Vanessa didn't say anything for a moment. She just stood there, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded and turned toward the door. Okay, Rachel. I'll let them know. But I think you should be prepared for the fallout. I watched her leave, the door clicking shut behind her. I was prepared. I had to be. But deep down, I knew the decision I had made wasn't going to come without consequences. I just hadn't expected them to hit so fast. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of emails and conference calls, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. It wasn't just about the business deal anymore. It was about everything. The years of being overlooked, dismissed, ignored by my own family. I picked up my phone and stared at the string of missed calls from my parents. They had left voice messages, each one more desperate than the last. My mother's voice, choked with emotion, asking me to reconsider. My father's tone, tinged with anger, demanding that I fix things. And then Noah, his voice small and apologetic, saying he didn't mean to hurt me. I silenced the phone and set it down, the weight of their expectations pressing against me. They had always expected me to clean up their messes, to play the good daughter, the dutiful one. But I wasn't their safety net anymore. I had finally realized that, no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I sacrificed, they would never see me for who I really was. Not unless I forced them to. A sharp knock on the door broke my thoughts. Vanessa entered again, her face tight with tension. They're here, she said quietly. Your parents and Noah. They want to speak with you. I stood up from my desk, straightening my jacket as I took a deep breath. This was it. The reckoning. I followed Vanessa down the hall, every step feeling heavier than the last. When I entered the conference room, I saw them sitting around the table, my father, Noah, and my mother. They all looked up as I entered, their faces a mix of frustration and guilt. No one spoke for a moment, and I let the silence stretch. I wasn't going to be the one to break it. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Rachel, he started, his voice low and tight. We've been through a lot together. You know that. But you can't just what? I interrupted, meeting his gaze. What exactly am I supposed to do? Keep playing the role you've created for me? Keep pretending everything's fine when it's not? My father shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between me and Noah. My mother, too, seemed to shrink into herself, her eyes downcast. Noah opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. You're all here, expecting me to apologize, I said, my voice steady now. But I'm not the one who needs to apologize. For years, I've been the one carrying this family. I've been the one picking up the pieces. And I'm done with it. I took a step closer to the table, feeling the weight of every word. I'm not going to be the one who fixes this anymore. You wanted me to play by your rules, but I'm not doing that. Not anymore. Noah shifted, his face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and guilt. Rachel, I never meant to. Stop, I snapped. You didn't mean to? Well, I didn't mean to be treated like I didn't matter either. The room went silent again. The air between us felt thick with the weight of years of resentment. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix it. I wasn't the one at fault here. I turned to my father. You want me to smooth things over, to go back to being your good little daughter? You're going to have to earn my respect first. I'm not just going to do what you want anymore. I walked to the door, stopping just before I left. I'm done being the one who gets used. You all need to figure out how to deal with the consequences of your actions. I'm not fixing this for you. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving them to stew in their anger, their disappointment. The deal was done. And I was done too. From now on, it was my turn to be seen. It wasn't long after the meeting that the calls began. First from Noah, then from my mother, and finally from my father. Each voicemail was a mix of guilt and desperation. Each one a thinly veiled attempt to get me to soften, to come back into the fold. I let them sit in my inbox, untouched. I wasn't ready to listen, not yet. Not until I was certain that I had done the right thing. A couple of days passed, the silence between us stretching longer with each minute that ticked by. I was getting work done, pushing through the necessary motions to ensure that Westridge's trajectory remained on course. But every now and then, the nagging feeling of my family's absence would creep in. It wasn't guilt, though. It was just a reminder that everything had changed. Then one evening, I received a text that stopped me in my tracks. Noah. Rachel, can we talk? I messed up. I want to make this right. I want you to know I'm sorry. I never realized how much I took you for granted. I read the message over and over. For a moment, I considered calling him back. Maybe we could talk. Maybe this was the apology I had waited for. But I knew better. Apologies like these were just temporary. I had heard them too many times before, and I was tired of the cycle. Instead, I sent him a simple reply. I don't need your apology, Noah. I need you to see me for who I am. That was the last time I heard from him directly. It wasn't long before my mother called. The voicemail was long, the kind she used to leave when she didn't know how else to express her emotions. Rachel, sweetheart, I don't know what happened between us, but I need you to know that we're still your family. I love you. I'm sorry if I didn't show that the way I should have. I don't want to lose you, not like this. I didn't listen to the whole message. I wasn't ready. A few more days passed, and as the silence stretched on, I found myself finally sitting down to face it. They weren't going to come back to me, not until they realized what they had lost. Not until they understood that this time, there would be no going back. I got an email from Noah a week later, this time with a subject line that read, "Let's talk." When I opened it, it was a long letter, one filled with guilt and self-pity. He apologized profusely, talked about how he'd never meant to hurt me. But all I could think about was how it was always the same. Always him, always trying to make me feel like I was the one who needed to be fixed. I sat at my desk, reading his words, and for a moment I considered responding. Maybe I could explain to him how his actions made me feel invisible. Maybe I could try one last time to get him to understand. But something in me snapped before I could type a single word. He didn't get it. None of them did. I hit the delete button without replying, my finger trembling just a little as I did. I wasn't going to beg for their approval anymore. I wasn't going to try to make them understand, not when they never had. I sat back in my chair, the realization settling over me like a heavy weight. The choice had been mine all along, to walk away, to stop trying to fit into a family that had never truly seen me. But it wasn't just that. I was finally letting go of the need for their validation, their image-driven, shallow version of family. I was done with it. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my father, one that arrived much later than the others. I know you're angry with us and I understand why, but I need you to know that we've always been proud of you. I've always been proud of what you've accomplished. Even if I didn't show it the way I should have. I was wrong to take you for granted. You're still my daughter, Rachel. I don't want to lose you. I closed my eyes as I read it. The familiar tug of wanting to believe him, wanting to believe that maybe this time, things would be different. But I couldn't ignore the years of history, the years of being pushed aside, of being treated like I didn't matter. I took a deep breath and set the phone down, my mind clear. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to fall into their trap again. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to take Westridge to the next level, with or without their support. I didn't need their approval to be successful. I had already proven that. As I walked out of my office that evening, the weight of the decision felt lighter. I wasn't waiting for my family to come around anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to finally see me for who I really was. I had already seen it for myself. And that was all that mattered. The days after my last interaction with my family were quiet. The kind of quiet that fills a room when something significant has shifted, and no one knows exactly how to act anymore. I didn't hear from my parents or Noah for the next week, and the silence settled into something almost peaceful. It was the kind of calm that came with the understanding that the storm was over. I had made my stand, and now, it was time for me to move on. But I knew they wouldn't stay silent forever. My mother, especially, would never let it go. She had always been the one to push and pull, guilt-tripping me into doing what they wanted, pulling me back into their drama when it suited them. She wasn't the kind of person to just let things be. And sure enough, the phone rang late one afternoon. I wasn't surprised to see her name on the screen. I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready for her yet. The voicemail came a few minutes later. "Rachel, we need to talk. Your father and I have been discussing things, and I think it's time for us to meet. This situation, it's been really hard on all of us, and I know you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle things. We're family, sweetheart. We've been through too much together to let something like this tear us apart." I closed my eyes and let her words settle into the space between my thoughts. The manipulation, the guilt. She always played the same card, and I wasn't falling for it anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't even check the rest of the messages. It was clear what they wanted from me, an apology, a chance to make things right. But I wasn't going to be the one to fix it this time. Not when they hadn't bothered to meet me halfway. The next day, my father showed up at my office. He didn't call first. Just showed up, unannounced, like he always had, expecting me to drop everything for him. I didn't even look up from my desk when he entered. He stood there for a long moment, quiet, like he was waiting for me to acknowledge him. But I didn't. Finally, he sighed and spoke. "Rachel, I didn't come here to argue. I just want you to understand that we're still your family. This business, this merger, none of it matters if we lose you. You're my daughter, and I need you to see that." I looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time since I'd walked out of that meeting with him and Noah. He was standing in the middle of my office, hands folded tightly in front of him, his face lined with years of stress and regret. I didn't want to feel sympathy for him, but I couldn't help it. He was my father, and I had spent my life seeking his approval, desperate for him to see me as more than the person who fixed all their problems. But that had to end. I had to stop letting them use me. "You don't get it, do you?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "You don't get what I've been through. You've never seen me for who I really am. You've never treated me like an equal. You just want me to keep picking up the pieces, to keep making everything work for you." My father's face tightened, and he took a step closer to my desk. "I don't know what happened to you, Rachel," he said softly. "You used to be so different. You used to want to help. Now you're just cold. You're pushing us away for no reason." I shook my head, the frustration bubbling up inside me. "You want me to help, Dad? You want me to be the daughter you're proud of? Then stop treating me like I'm invisible. Stop acting like I'm just a tool to fix things when it's convenient. I built something here. I built Westridge. And I did it on my own. You've never once acknowledged that." He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I don't need your forgiveness, Dad. I don't need your approval. I've spent my whole life trying to earn it, trying to make you see me, and I'm done. I'm done trying to fix things for you." I stood up from my desk, my voice steady as I added, "And I'm not going to be the one who keeps holding this family together. Not anymore." For a long moment, my father just stood there, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. Finally he spoke, his voice soft, almost pleading. "Rachel, please. I just don't understand. This isn't how we solve things in this family." I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. "You don't understand, because you've never tried to. You've always expected me to just fit into the mold you created. But I'm done playing that role." I picked up my coat from the back of my chair. "I'm going to the office, Dad. I have work to do. You're welcome to stay here, or you can leave, but I'm done talking about this." I walked past him without another word, heading for the door. My father didn't move, didn't try to stop me. And that was enough. I knew he wouldn't understand, but it wasn't my job to make him understand anymore. As I walked out of my office, I could feel the weight of the decision settle over me, the finality of it. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my power, and my independence. I wasn't going back to them, and I wasn't going to be the one who fixed their messes anymore. When I stepped into the elevator, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about freedom. And for the first time in my life, I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't waiting for their approval. I didn't need it. And I wasn't going to be the one who kept bending over backward to fit into their world. It was time for me to step into mine. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, press releases, and final touches to the merger. The weight of what I had done, cutting ties with my family, stepping into my own power, was starting to feel like something I could finally breathe into. For the first time in years, I didn't have to balance my success with their expectations. I was free. Westridge was growing faster than I had anticipated, and with the merger officially sealed, I was finally seeing the fruits of my labor. New investors, new projects, new opportunities. It was a whirlwind of progress, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. But as much as the work consumed me, I couldn't ignore the shift in the way I was living. I was no longer playing the role of the good daughter, the dutiful sibling. I had let go of the pressure to be who they wanted me to be, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It was late one evening when I received a message from Aunt Margaret. I hadn't heard from her since everything had gone down with my family, and I hadn't really expected to hear from her at all. But when I saw her name flash across my phone screen, something in me shifted. I picked up the phone, my heart a little lighter, and pressed it to my ear. Aunt Margaret. Rachel. Her voice was warm, and it felt like a balm to the rawness that had been building inside me for weeks. How are you doing, sweetheart? I leaned back in my chair, letting her words settle over me. I didn't have to put on a mask with her. I didn't have to pretend. I'm doing better, Aunt Margaret. It's been a lot, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. She was quiet for a moment. I'm glad to hear that. I've been thinking a lot about you and the decisions you've made. You're a strong woman, Rachel. I know it hasn't been easy, but I admire your courage. I felt a lump in my throat. She always knew how to say just the right thing. Thank you. It's been hard, Aunt Margaret. I never thought I'd have to make that kind of break, but I realized I've been living for them, trying to earn their approval for years. And I was so tired of it. I know, darling, she said softly. You've been carrying that weight for too long. You deserve to be free. You deserve to live your life on your terms. Her words washed over me, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel a sense of peace. I didn't need my family to define me anymore. I didn't need their validation. I was more than enough on my own. I think I'm finally starting to understand that, I said quietly, more to myself than to her. I've been so focused on proving something to them, but I've been neglecting what I need, what I want. I've spent my whole life trying to fit into their idea of success, and I don't even know if it's what I want anymore. Good, Aunt Margaret said firmly. You don't owe them an explanation, Rachel. They've had their chance to see you for who you are. But now, it's time for you to see yourself. And I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I always have been. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally spilled over, but they were different this time. These were tears of relief, of release, of freedom. I wiped my eyes and sniffled. Thank you, Aunt Margaret. That means the world to me. Good, she said again, her voice softer now. Because you're going to need that reminder. There are going to be tough moments ahead, when the weight of the past tries to pull you back. But remember this, you are not defined by them. You are defined by the woman you've become. And that woman is strong, capable, and deserving of every success that comes her way. I smiled through the tears, feeling lighter than I had in years. I needed to hear that more than I realized. Aunt Margaret laughed gently. I know, sweetheart. You always were a strong one. Just don't forget to give yourself credit for it. We spoke for a little longer, catching up on the small details of life that I had been neglecting while caught up in the whirlwind of family and business. When we hung up, I felt something in me settle, a quiet sense of clarity that hadn't been there before. As I sat back in my chair, Staring at the city lights outside my window, I realized how far I had come. I had built something from nothing. I had faced down my family's expectations, and I had chosen my own path. And now, I was ready for the next chapter. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a new sense of purpose. I had been so focused on the merger, on proving myself to my family, that I had almost forgotten what it meant to truly believe in what I had created. Westridge wasn't just a company, it was my legacy, my vision, and I was going to take it even further. That afternoon, Vanessa handed me a small, carefully wrapped gift. I raised an eyebrow, surprised, but she just smiled and shrugged. "A little something from Aunt Margaret," she said, with a knowing glint in her eyes. I unwrapped the gift to find a business card holder, an elegant silver piece, engraved with a pattern that reminded me of my grandmother's old jewelry. On the back was a simple inscription: "Family is built on respect, not expectations." I held it in my hands for a moment, the weight of it grounding me. This was more than just a gift, it was a reminder. A reminder that my real family was built on love, respect, and mutual support, not on obligations or appearances. I placed it on my desk, letting the words sink in. This was my foundation now, my own self-built family. And as I turned back to my work, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. I had everything I needed, and I was finally on my own terms. Christmas morning came and went in a blur, but it wasn't the chaos of family gatherings that I was used to. This year, there were no forced smiles, no awkward silences between me and my parents, no unspoken grudges hanging in the air. I had made my decision, and with it, I had made peace with the past. The truth was, for the first time in a long while, I was actually enjoying the holiday season. I had nothing to prove, no appearances to maintain. I was free from the weight of my family's expectations, and in their place, there was something unexpected: peace. I woke up early that morning, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, casting a soft glow through my apartment. There was a chill in the air, but it felt refreshing, like the world had exhaled, and I was finally allowed to breathe. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down by the window, watching the early morning commuters rush by below. It was a quiet day, just what I needed. I checked my phone for the first time that morning. There was the usual string of missed calls and messages from my family, the same desperate tone I had been avoiding for weeks. My mother had left another message asking me to come over, to make things right. Noah had sent a simple text: "We miss you." And my father, in his typical fashion, had sent a few brief words: "We need to talk." But there was something different this time. Their words didn't sting. They didn't hold the same weight they once had. The guilt, the obligation to reply, had melted away. I was no longer part of that world. I was building something new. I set my phone aside and focused on the warmth of my coffee, the calmness of the moment. A soft knock on the door broke my thoughts, and when I opened it, I was greeted by the smiling face of Aunt Margaret, holding a small box wrapped in gold paper. "Happy Christmas, sweetheart," she said, stepping into my apartment with a welcoming hug. The smell of cinnamon and pine clung to her, reminding me of the kind of holidays I used to dream of. The kind of holidays I had never had with my family, where love wasn't tied to expectations, where relationships weren't transactional. "Thank you, Aunt Margaret. You didn't have to do this." I stepped back, allowing her to enter and place the box on the coffee table. "Of course I did." She smiled, her eyes warm with affection. "I know this Christmas might look different for you, but I wanted you to know that you've got someone in your corner." I sat down beside her, the weight of her words hitting me in the best way. "I'm glad you're here," I said, my voice soft. It was the first time in a long time that I'd felt like I truly belonged somewhere, that I wasn't just filling a role. Aunt Margaret smiled and handed me the small box. "Open it," she urged. I carefully unwrapped the paper, and inside, I found a simple keychain. Nothing fancy, just a sleek leather design with an engraving that read, "You are enough." I ran my fingers over the engraving, feeling the weight of it. For the first time in a long time, I realized that these words were what I had been searching for. In all the years I had tried to fit into my family's mold, I had been telling myself I wasn't enough. But now, I was learning to believe it. I was enough. "You're the only one who has ever really seen me, Aunt Margaret," I said, my voice cracking just slightly as emotion bubbled to the surface. I've spent my whole life looking for approval, and I think for the first time, I finally feel like I don't need it anymore. Aunt Margaret reached over and patted my hand gently. Sweetheart, you've always been enough. You just had to see it for yourself. You've built something incredible, and I'm so proud of you. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't stop them. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Truly seen, for who I was, not for what I could give, not for what they expected from me, but for the person I had become. I swallowed, wiping away a tear before I could blink it away. Thank you. She squeezed my hand. Now, I know this might sound a little cliché, but I want you to promise me something. You've spent so long building this incredible business, this empire of yours. But don't forget to build something that matters in your personal life, too. You don't have to do everything on your own. I looked at her, the weight of her words settling in. It had been so easy to lose myself in the work, to bury myself in the business world where I felt in control. But I was starting to realize that no amount of success would ever fill the hole I had in my heart. A hole that only real connections could fill. I won't forget, I promised her. I've learned that even if I have everything I want professionally, it's the relationships I build along the way that matter most. Aunt Margaret smiled, her eyes gleaming with approval. Good. We spent the rest of the day together, just the two of us, talking and laughing over a quiet Christmas meal. It wasn't fancy or extravagant, but it was everything I needed. It was everything I had been craving without even realizing it. As the day wound down, Aunt Margaret gave me one last hug before she left. Remember, you're always welcome here. Don't be afraid to lean on the people who truly care about you. As she walked out the door, I stood there for a moment, taking in the silence. The world outside was still moving, but for once, I didn't feel like I was running after it. I was exactly where I needed to be, surrounded by people who saw me for who I was, not for the image I could create. Christmas evening was quiet, but it was peaceful. I looked at the press releases that had gone out, the new business acquisitions, the new deals. Everything was falling into place. But it wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about something deeper, something real. As I reflected on the past year, I realized that success wasn't measured by the deals I closed or the money I made. It was measured by the people I had around me, the connections I had made, and the peace I had found within myself. This Christmas, I had everything I needed. It wasn't defined by the people who had ignored me or treated me as an afterthought. It was defined by my own strength, by the people who truly loved and respected me. And for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely at peace.